ladies are real fast. Oh, it's all the Greenville kids. No.
Who are we waiting on? Where's
She's back there. She's back there. Oh my goodness.
Lonely, lost alone. You know that I will always bring you home. Won't leave you alone. And even when I fall away, when you are on my mind, when you are on my mind, don't you mind?
Anybody can whistle? They're so cute. I know.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening and welcome everyone to the June 4th Board of Education retreat. But tonight is actually a very special occasion for us, and it's so nice to see Mrs. Napolitano here this evening waving, and all of the students from Greenvale. So we're very excited to celebrate all of you this evening. With that, Dr. Valenti, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Matt. And we don't want to keep our students waiting any longer. And we'll get right to honoring our Greenvale third graders. And we'd like to do that in two ways. Number one, if we could have the pleasure of Mrs. Napolitano, Lauren, and Cindy coming up to the microphone, please. If you would give us some context. And then what we would like to do is show the film clip, and then you could introduce students. How about that? Does that work for everybody?
Sure.
Okay, so please give us context.
Okay, so we just wanted to thank everyone for your support, the energy level, the excitement that you helped with our class just kind of achieve this goal was unbelievable. Ms. Napolitano sent us an email that outlined the contest, and we were all very eager to kind of jump on board and collaborate. We learned by reading stories about falcons, we learned information and facts, where they live, just kind of traits about them. And then from that, we had a collaborative conversation, and the students came up with multiple names. I think we were at like 50 names.
Lots of names.
Some of them Velasa T. Another one was yours. Another one was Captain Falcon. So in order to come up with the name, they had to then support it with the facts that they read and they learned about for the Falcon. And then ultimately, we decided on Beyonce. So we submitted the name. Two of my students, Isabella and Oliver, came up with the name, and they created a poster that matched kind of their idea, their thought, their inspiration. We submitted that along with the Google form, and then we were very pleasantly surprised to hear that we were in the top 10. And then from that, I mean, the support that we were given was unbelievable. I mean, we knew Greenville was always great, but the excitement level, the energy, it just really showed the kids how much everybody cared about us. And from there, it just soared, and we won. We were the big winners, so we were very, very excited to hear, and it was just very motivating for the students. And it was nice to see our hard work and effort paid off at the end. Yeah.
Let's give them a big round of applause. Can we show the clip that we have, Jonathan? And then we'll maybe bring up some of the students.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry. There we go.
The peregrine chicks that hatched on top of the Mario Cuomo Tappan Zee Bridge. The top winner is a namesake with a creative twist, thought up by a group of third graders. CBS 2's John Diaz has that story from East Chester.
9-year-old Isabella Polanco knows all the words to Beyonce's latest hit. So it's no surprise this superfan and her classmate Oliver Cole thought of the icon when entering the naming contest for the 4 peregrine falcon chicks that hatched in a nest box on the Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge recently.
I was like, I don't think we're gonna win.
But their creative name, Beyonce, soared to the top of the list, winning with 26% of the vote, beating out Estrella, Taylor Swift, and Jen. More than 100 entries were submitted by elementary school students across Rockland and Westchester counties. Almost 200,000 votes were counted.
I've never experienced something like this.
It was a group effort. Both students are in the same 3rd grade class at Greenville Elementary in Eastchester. After learning about the Falcons in school, the class agreed with the 2 students' idea to compare the bird strong suits with Beyonce's.
She has a strong voice, like the falcons have a strong beak, and we thought the two went together.
Their co-teachers and principal are proud.
Give them the opportunity to feel a part of something that's not in their everyday, ordinary lives. The whole school rallied around this 3rd grade class.
And when it comes to prizes,
Are we gonna get something special? Are we gonna have like extra recess or anything?
in the coming weeks, a certified falconer will visit the class and the bridge will be lit in their school colors. But there's one ultimate prize these kids really wish they could win.
Beyonce, come visit us!
From Eastchester, John Diaz, CBS 2 News.
would just like to thank the community for all voting for us and all your support. Thank you for voting, and I wish you guys a great week.
Thank you for everyone in the Greenville community for voting, and thank you to Ms. Napolitano, our principal.
And thank you to the wonderful staff, teachers, principals. Thank you for supporting our students, really. Let's give them all a big round.
Girls, come on, boys. We're gonna take a picture. Come on, our fame hasn't ended yet. Right here, guys. Stand right here. Now back up, guys. Take 2 big steps backward. Here's a couple steps back. All right. No. Also back.
Michael, do you have a shot for posterity's sake?
Great, thank you so much.
Oh, facing the opposite way. Turn around here.
And I just want to say, it's this type of learning that gives them that real world experience. It's that application of knowledge that really makes it interesting, and they were so engaged. And I think the thing that makes me most proud is how every other class in the school rallied around this one class. They were genuinely excited for this one group, and they knew there was nothing in it for them. It was about this class. It was just so heartwarming, and it really brought just such joy to the school. So thank you to Mrs. Tolomeo, Mrs. Ingram. You guys did an incredible job. And thank you, boys and girls. You made us so proud.
Now, we'd love to have you stay, but if moms and dads want to get home and get folks to do their homework, we'll take a quick break. Thank you all for coming, really. Thank you.
I know. Like not one person left. Good. Cleared house. We're done.
So,
We're done.
so now that we've cleared the room, the rules of engagement for a board workshop are that it's live streaming. No one is allowed to speak except the board members and administration. But we do get this out to the community, so it is being taped. So let me move expeditiously. Each board member has received this PowerPoint. Michael just sent it to you. So if you take a look at your iPhones or iPads, you would find this report there. And
Where did you email it to? Our
it's BOE, right? Eastchester BOE.
Okay, so we should all probably log in.
Well,
That's Michael to log in from the laptop.
or your iPhone. Do you have an iPhone? Or?
Yeah, but you can't really download. The service in here isn't great to download a PowerPoint. But that's okay. We can log in from here. That's fine.
All right.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'll continue. This is important, but not necessarily as exciting as the prior entry. But we do have a district-wide safety plan. As of tonight, it is being placed on the district website for 30-day review in accord with the law. We would like to adopt it at the July 9th reorg meeting. And there have been some changes. You see them up listed on the screen. We've been asked to add a board member representative, and Christine Civitano Lombardi has agreed to do that. We've asked to have a PTA representative, Natalie Vera. And we've asked for a teacher representative, kindergarten teacher at Waverly, Nicole Ulrich. So those changes will be noted on the website. And there will be meetings, but it's not regularity of meetings. And John Kruger, our safety officer, district-wide safety officer, will be coordinating this plan and its implementation through the school year. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. If not, we'll move on. We're good? So tonight we would like to talk about our Science Olympiad program. We've had teacher representatives here. Danielle Laurie and her colleague, Madeline LeBou, has been here. And they have asked if we would consider additional funding for next year for expansion of the program. So I want to point out these are not necessarily budgeted at this point. We did not present them in the budgetary process, but we do think it's important that we help fund them. And that's why we try and create a budget with some flexibility. And part of our job is to go in and see where we can find additional funds. So just to give you an idea, right now they would like to have Tier 5 coaches so that we expand the number of students participating, therefore engaging more teachers in the program. It's really catching on fire, and 2 teachers are not going to do it. So we'll create 2 Tier 5 coaches. These are contractual amounts, $5,000 each annually. And we'll create Tier 3 coaches, which currently exist, and hire 2 more. So we're literally doubling our coaching staff at the middle school from 2 to 4. And of course, that's where we'd be investing an additional $10,000. They've asked for consideration of attending the state tournament for students, hotel, transportation. And this year, we've budgeted a little bit less than $10,000. They think $11,500 would do it. And then you have to consider materials, shirts, registration fees. This year, we had about $2,700 budgeted. We want to increase that to $3,500. So net, we have budgeted for next year about $20,000, and we're increasing it to $25,000. So we have to find $5,000 in change, which is not a terribly heavy lift, and we think it's an important project. Yep.
I think just the math on the proposed number is closer to 32, just might not be working right.
You might be right, because 10 and 7 is
It's gotta be at least 10 more.
17, 28, 5, 31. You're talking 32 grand, not 25. Yeah, you're right. That's why you're in accounting. I do apologize for that mistake. Anyway, so it's an increase of $12,000. We'll still find it. But we'll make that adjustment. In fact, Michael may be able to make it tonight. Michael, are you with us? If you add that list under proposed, it would come to, what is it, 17? 28.5, right? 29.32. Change the 25 to 32,000. Is that right, Jill? Is that the addition? 32,000? Right. So Michael can change.
Yeah, the total's 32. Yeah, Dr. Valenti, while Michael's looking at that, question for you about this, because I'm not sure if I remember the numbers correctly, but increasing for this particular program, how many more students do we think will be able to participate because we would be adding these tier 5 coaches?
Well, right now we've been turning students away.
Oh,
We think
okay.
we'd be able to double the number of students. So
great.
we're probably talking in the neighborhood of 80 youngsters,
That's great.
grades 6, 7, 8. The other consideration is that a number of our 8th graders are going into the high school. What program is there for them? So we need to think about the high school as well, and would the science research program at the high school level adequately accommodate rising 8th graders? But to put a number on it and then get a more firm number, I'd say we're probably looking at doubling numbers to about 80 to 100 students from the middle school.
That's great. Thank you.
I did want to address some good news on academic goals. As you know, one of our budgetary goals for next year, as well as academic, is that we introduce our students to more rigorous grade 8 math and science regions courses. And for 24-25, these are the latest numbers that I've gotten from the middle school. For Algebra 8R, we're now entering our second year there. We have 157 students, or nearly 3/4 of the entire class. Earth Science, this is our first time trying it. We have 64% of the students, 135. Those are very good numbers, and I can only see those numbers growing over the next few years as we see students succeeding and engaging more students, and we're willing to provide extra support help, so some additional staffing. Danielle Laurie, is that Danielle Laurie? Danielle, please come up here. I thought you were going to come tonight, and we had a question. I gave an estimated answer. I'm sure you can give a better answer. One of the board members wanted to know, how many more students do you think we'll be serving? And say anything else you want about this.
Right, so the current registration for this year for regionals was 1 team being enrolled, which 1 team you're able to allow 15 students as part of the main team to compete, usually with 5 to 6 alternates listed that can compete in trial events. That was as much as we could cover for this year, was 15 students competing. But on a regular basis within attendance to the club, we probably had about 30 to 40 per week that were attending, that we had to turn away, more than half of those students that were working towards that goal but didn't actually get to compete at regionals. So the idea is that next year, by registering 2 teams, we expand to 30 students that can actually compete, and hopefully more students that continue to enroll in the program and participate and use the build events, and even if they're not necessarily competing, that with the additional coaches we can increase the number of kids we can physically watch and incorporate and involve within the program. And down the line, there's other districts that do have 3 teams that they enroll at regionals, and I think we talked about in that kind of organizational meeting that we had with Dr. Valenti and other staff members that we're trying to scale at a reasonable way each year, that we make sure that we do it right each step of the way. That our first year we enrolled 1 team, we got through regionals. Second year, 1 team again, but we scaled to be able to make it to states. And I think with this kind of plan and adding the coaching staff, that adding the second team at regionals is definitely an achievable goal with this additional funding. And then down the line, if we feel we can scale again and we continue to have success, then it's something we'd look forward to in the future.
Thank you. So Ms. Laurie, just a really quick question along those lines of what you said. So you feel comfortable with this proposal? Is this enough? Should we be doing more? Even if you just add 1 additional team, is this everything you need to successfully just add 1 team and not turn any kids away?
Right, yeah, so I think it's plenty. Our idea being that We were meeting officially 1 day a week as well, but we were pulling in, Tom and I, students pretty much every day leading up to it. So the addition of the 2 coaches allows them to focus potentially a second day during the week, that we would be meeting twice a week, and they, we would split it up, 2 coaches one day, 2 coaches another, and then still feeding them in between as well. When we went through the budget, we looked at essentially for materials. We're looking at if we're registering a second team, having to really increase the materials budget as well. Some stuff's reusable from one year to the next, but not everything. So materials, definitely we increased. Transportation essentially stays the same. The buses hold a pretty large capacity for us to be able to transport the 2 teams, so that was something that really we didn't have to anticipate any increases with. The hotels and the state tournament, that's pretty consistent as well. That you can only bring 1 team to state, so that's something that no matter what district, how many teams you enroll at regionals, you can only enter 1 team at state level. So that one should be fairly close to the same, but we padded in some funding because everything increases year to year just to make sure that we do have enough. So I feel comfortable after that meeting that we really accommodated for everything. The coaching staff was our big concern, is that, between Tom and I putting in all the time we were putting in and really getting content area experts, we already found teachers that are interested, teachers that have expertise more in the earth science and technology fields, which Tom and I don't. So I think we really reached a good place. And I think with that meeting also, we were able to streamline a lot in that we talked about creating a single budget line within the budget so that it's not, we were kind of piecemealing it together between district and building and donations from Eastchester School Foundation, which worked in the previous years, but I think having it more streamlined will really help us out. And then another thing we talked about, and I know we mentioned as a strategic goal at the last meeting we presented at, getting a PTA, EMS PTA Google form sent out to leverage community volunteers as well. And that's obviously nothing funding purposes, but just something else we talked about at the meeting as well. So I think we're in a really, really strong and great place to continue really elevating our placement at each of the events in the future. So we're really looking forward to it. We appreciate the consideration of all this. I know it has to be officially, brought into the budget, and if there's any other questions or anything that comes up, we're happy to answer it.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danielle. Yeah. So again, to continue with our academic goals, another one for next year is to reduce the number of non-region sections. Principles of Geometry and Principles of Algebra 2 are really sections that were created for students who would not be taking Regents level or honors level courses. And in our view, Regents should be the default option at Eastchester, that if we're going to raise the standard, we ought not to be carrying non-Regents sections. So our success for next year is we're going to be able to increase our Geometry H by 1 section and Geometry Regents by 2, and we'll be increasing our Algebra 2R as well, which would allow us then to eliminate, as you can see, a total of 3 sections of non-Regents and adding those sections into higher level, more challenging courses.
Dr. Valenti, along those lines of this, have we taken into account students with learning differences or what the impact would be there by moving this way?
Yes, in fact, that was a purposeful action that we took. Does somebody want to let Nancy Pavia into the meeting? I'm getting a message here to admit her. That was a purposeful action. We particularly wanted to involve struggling learners, and we wanted to involve students with IEPs. Now, what that meant was, number one, opening the gates a little bit more. It also meant allowing the parental option, thank you, meaning if a parent wanted their child in the program but was not selected, the parent could self-select to have the child in the program. Conversely, if the child was chosen using revised criteria and the parent felt, no, this might be a bit much, then that parent has the right to suggest, I don't need my child there. So, thank you. So that was one tool in the toolbox. The other tool is that if a child is struggling or needs more support, rather than going on a 6-day cycle 6 times during the period, you would have an additional support class every other day. So you would go 9 times during a 6-day cycle for either Algebra R or Math, Earth Science regions. So that additional dosage gives some youngsters the support with the same teacher. That's very important, that you keep the same teacher there who gets to know the students over the period of the course of a semester and a year. So these are all, shall we say, additional tools that we've put in place to help struggling learners and students who should be taking Regents level courses.
I just wondered, is there also going to be, like, I don't know if this is the right terminology, but an extra teacher in any of these Regents level classrooms or not? Like a collaborative teacher?
There will be,
Maybe not in all of them, but in,
yeah, there will be what we call a 6th period assignment. So an additional 0.2 or 0.4 or 0.6 as needed, and it could be our very own faculty who fill the gap. If we need to hire a full-time equivalent, science certified or math certified teacher, we're ready to do that as well. So right now, I don't have all the numbers in terms of how this plays out on sections. When I met with Erin Glinmeyer and Minnie Iannuzzi, it looked like net 11 math teachers this year, 11 math teachers next year. And so far, I haven't seen science. I should mention, as an aside, we are bringing in a consultant who will be working with us in terms of looking at scheduling. Both the middle school felt a real strong need to have somebody there who was monitoring the numbers, particularly with this algebra and earth science edition. And at the high school, with our master schedule, Giuseppe retiring and Jeff retiring, we thought it might be a great transition to have somebody work with the team this month, June, and next month, and that work has already begun. We brought in a consultant, Mr. McCarthy, who's a retired principal and superintendent from the region, and he's done a lot of master scheduling.
With the, I guess, the reduction in for just the math, are you also looking at like the higher level sciences? I mean, it's been a while since I was in a high school, but is there still like a Regents for the biology, trigonometry, and chemistry? Are you also looking to, I guess, consolidate and or increase like workshops in the science department as well for the same like struggling students?
Yes, and we're looking to provide whatever support is necessary so that students can succeed at Regents level, all right? We're also looking to open doors in certain AP courses where we think that more students could succeed if given the opportunity, and perhaps even some additional honors sections. So what we're pushing is more students taking more rigorous courses and filling out their menu or schedule with not courses that are the equivalent sometimes of basket weaving, but we want to incent students to work harder. Part of that problem, and that will surface when we bring in the new team, is that students will say, well, wait a minute, I'm doing quite well in the non-Regents course. Thank you. Why should I work harder in a Regents course? And the only way you incentivize students is to, for GPA purposes, you weight a class higher. That could be a legitimate incentive. But there are students concerned about the GPA who would say, well, you know, if I can get a 90 in a non-Regents class, why should I struggle for an 80 in a Regents class? So we do have to come up with, this is not just a matter of changing curriculum or a matter of teacher support. This is also a matter of changing the culture of students and their willingness to engage themselves in more challenging, more difficult coursework. So that's a big hill to climb. You know, it's a multi-stage effort.
Can I just add, so, but this, they'll also still continue to be, I know high school has math workshops.
Yes.
So
Now,
the
now there are
rigor in the
two
math
definitions
workshop-
of
yeah.
workshop. One is contractual, that you can put certain students into a workshop class, and that would be the teacher's study hall. We're talking about a workshop where, in effect, you would purchase an additional 0.2 of a teacher to provide direct intervention and support. That is a very different model.
Yes.
The current contractual model is, I will be there to help you, come in and ask me your question. The workshop that we take the initiative on is, you're assigned to my class and you're going to do better because this is the extra oomph that we need to get you through.
So is that going to be new and different going into this?
It's already in place
It
this
is,
year.
okay.
We started that grade 8 with the algebra regents.
Okay.
And those additional classes, call them workshops, call them whatever, we are paying additional staff to do that. We want to now replicate that in earth science. Now, the impact is at the high school level, geometry. A lot of the youngsters who never took algebra are now moving into geometry regions. So this has a domino effect of requiring more support going forward. But that's okay. That's why you want to engage students more. And if it means an additional investment, it's really getting youngsters into a program of rigor that they would not have normally chosen. Right? Okay, I don't know if Dr. Chester is here. She was kind enough to put together these two PowerPoints. A lot has been asked about the science of reading, and I asked Susan if she would lead an effort to engage more of our faculty in Orton Gillingham. Now, let me explain. Orton Gillingham is very intensive training so that students are provided intensive support by an what they call OG certified teacher. You also have Wilson trained teachers, okay? It's going for a certification. We are prepared to pick up the tuition for 20 faculty members to attend this type of a program that looks at the neurological brain base of reading, multisensory-based diagnostic and prescriptive teaching, obviously phonics, which is the essence of science of reading, and the linguistic structure of the English language, phonological awareness, and then syllable structure, and more. And we're offering it in conjunction with Southern Westchester BOCES and the Green River Literacy Program. So we've offered, I've authorized that this is part of our professional development for any teacher who has volunteered. And it's approximately 30 to 50 hours online instruction that they would commit to. And we have more than 20 faculty members. This is our first cohort, and we'd like to see more come on board. The other effort we're making is SUNY at New Paltz is offering a micro-credential, and we've invited so far 40 of our faculty members, and that is just learning more about the science of reading. Our goal is that every teacher at the elementary level should complete this micro-credential. We're fully committed to the science of reading. We're fully committed to, as you see, phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And even the governor at that level has authorized money that is going to NYSERD. So there will be additional funds coming down the pike. SUNY at New Paltz took the effort early on, and so we decided to invest initially there to get at least 40 of our teachers trained. So I know there were issues raised about professional development. I think there is plenty there in the science of reading for our faculty. I think the question is, are we doing any of this for our teaching assistants? And before we open it up to them, we'd like to know that all of our faculty have seats, but gradually we can open it up to our TAs as well. The problem we run into is with our school monitors, because the training for them would mean also paying them above and beyond what they're currently earning. So there's an additional salary consideration there. Whereas our TAs and teachers are given times outside the scope of the normal school day, superintendent conference days, to do this kind of work. Any other comments or questions on this?
The only question that I have on this, Dr. Valenti, is in terms of kind of moving this further down, do we feel like this is a sufficient amount of time, the right programs for professional development, et cetera, or is this kind of just the first part and there's more work to be done?
I think it's the beginning.
Okay.
I really do. We're at the early part of this. As you know, the entire state is now conscious of the science of reading. All of the BOCES have been alerted. I think this is the beginning of a multi-year effort, and I think it has to sink into the undergraduate and graduate institutions, where it also should be implemented much more comprehensively than it currently is. So I think we're at the beginning of something good, but I think it's going to take at least 3 to 5 years to take hold before you really begin to see movement on test scores. This is long overdue, and the notion of holistic reading and other types of efforts, I think, have proven not to be as effective as this heavily scientific approach called the science of reading. And students who benefit from this, particularly struggling students, this is where it's going to really count. A lot of students are going to learn how to read no matter what. But for struggling students, unless they get these basics in place, they're not going to move. So that's critical to the success of this program, district-wide and statewide. Yeah.
Are the 20 faculty members that are earmarked to participate, are they predominantly coming out of the the Waverly School?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, on the Orton Gillingham, we did want to include some secondary staff because that's important at the middle and high. But for the science of reading, they're primarily elementary. And there are many more waiting in the wings. So we want to see how well this program goes over, how valuable is it. I know Susan is going to take it herself and give us feedback because it is somewhat intensive. You know, when you have that number of online hours, you have to make a commitment to do it over a period of time. It is asynchronous, but you still have to go in there and do the work in order to get the micro-credential.
I'm just curious, is there a period, like when are the teachers going to start the program?
We're looking at the summer.
And when do we expect to
Yeah,
have them in?
we're looking at work during this summer, July, August, so that they will have completed it for September.
And then a new cohort will?
Well, we can continue with cohorts because it's online.
Right.
So you don't necessarily need the summer to do it. If folks want to work during the fall, for example, we can have a cohort in the fall, an additional cohort then in the spring. Eventually, we may want to say to every teacher who we hire, one of the requirements is to complete the micro-credential.
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out what's the throughput in terms of how quickly are we trying to get a baseline of all faculty in elementary school to have this type of experience or exposure to
Right.
this type of training.
We're trying to do as much as we can this summer, and we're hoping the feedback is going to be positive. We want another cohort for the fall and then the spring. So it's going to be an ongoing effort where anyone who wants to teach in Eastchester should have completed the micro-credential. And we can make that a requirement, not only to hire somebody, but also to continue working. Could be a criterion for earning tenure as well.
I think it'd be helpful to see and track that through the year, right?
Yep.
Like see how many people took it in the summer.
Yep.
What's the ratio of outstanding? You know, and kind of where are we at? And is what they took is enough, right? Or do they need additional developmental opportunities?
And I would say maybe in the fall time frame, have some of these teachers in to talk about their experiences and what was it to get the micro-credential? Was it a valuable experience? What do you know today that you didn't know before you began the program? And also get reports from Morton Gillingham. So I think we need to do more what I call action research. That is to say, how effective is the program you're putting in place, and are you getting your ROI, your return on investment? Are there measurable inputs that a teacher survey would say, yes, I know a lot more now about the science of reading because of this experience. Thank you, all right? And likewise with Morton Gillingham. So I think those are areas we need to embark on and evaluate and give feedback. Okay, we have our consultant waiting in the wings. Nancy Pavia put together this PowerPoint. Nancy is out there, Robert, in cyberspace. Do you want to bring her in, or is she already here?
She's here. I'm not sure she could hear us yet.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
Ah,
Can you see me?
welcome, welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Dr. Valenti. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Nancy.
Okay,
Hi, thank
it's
you
all
for
yours.
inviting me
You're
to the
on.
meeting. I'm on. Okay, thank you for inviting me. You know, Dr. Valenti did share that you saw the professional development plan that I put together. But what I want to do tonight is just go over it a little bit briefly and then take some time to perhaps answer any questions you might have. I'm just going to share my screen at the moment. Can you see what is there?
Jackie, can you see okay there if you want to come down this way?
Can you see the slideshow, everyone?
Yes, we can, Nancy.
Yeah, Nancy, we're just rearranging our seats a little bit because three of us were sitting with our backs to you. It's hard to turn.
No problem, take
Sorry.
your time. Tell me when you're,
I think we're good.
all right, thank you. All right, now I can't, there we go. I just want you to see the overall goal or objective of putting together this professional plan. And the intent is to support teachers in implementing the new math program, Reveal Math. And the idea is to maximize the potential of Reveal as a teaching and learning tool. So keeping that in mind, when I met with Dr. Valenti and Irene Iannuzzi back in January and February, they asked how I thought I could support the teachers or help support the teachers in using Reveal in the classroom. And after a lot of conversation and discussion, we decided that the process really should begin with a needs assessment. The teachers had been using the program at this point for 2 years. So what are their needs at this given juncture? So I put together a survey asking teachers about their experience with Reveal. There are multiple components in Reveal, so I asked them how they were utilizing each of those components. And I also asked them to share what they felt their successes were. What are aspects of Reveal they found very rewarding, and perhaps what were some of the challenges or areas that they felt they needed more support in moving forward. In addition to the data I was able to gather from the survey, I had the good fortune of being able to go into the classrooms of each of the elementary schools. I would say I saw about 2/3 of the classrooms in each of the buildings. And it was a real pleasure. I mean, teachers were very welcoming, and it was very nice to see how engaged the students were in the math work. I was also able to get a feel of the culture of the rooms and look around the rooms to see evidence of mathematical learning. And I also had a chance to have conversations either while in the classroom or at meeting times, other meeting times during the day when I was in the building. In addition, I had conversations with each administrator, both the principal and assistant principal in each of the buildings. And I then looked at everything and took copious notes and tried to pull together some recommendations or areas that I thought would be good to work with the teachers moving forward to better utilize Reveal. But before I talk about what I think they need to work on, I would like to just to commend the district. I was told that your New York State tests from last May, after utilizing Reveal for a year, really went up. And that's a good sign. And also, some teachers shared some very positive feedback. And they felt that peer-to-peer collaboration and conversation and discourse has increased while utilizing Reveal. And they believe that the program is very tied and aligned, I should say, with the New York State Next Gen Learning Standards. And the learning standards define our curriculum as a New York State school of what students should know and be able to do at each individual grade level. They also felt the program was very balanced, and it had a very sound, to use their words, lesson structure. And every lesson the structure is the same from kindergarten through grade 5. So there is a great amount of consistency in the program. And they also commented on the collection of resources. There's a plentiful resources in Reveal that allow them to differentiate and meet individual students' needs. So what were my top 6 or handful of recommendations after talking with people and seeing students and listening? What I got a sense of and I questioned it, are the teachers really adhering to or understanding, and some sure are, the underpinnings, philosophical underpinnings of the program and the importance of the individual components within each unit and lesson? And many of the teachers said, gee, there's, and I've heard this many times, the time factor, trying to get a lesson in within the 60-minute time frame to teach mathematics. So I think having a conversation or working with the teachers to say, okay, what are the non-negotiable components within a unit and within a lesson that really are imperative to use so you don't lose integrity of the instruction or of understanding? And what are the negotiable ones? What are the ones that we don't always have to do, or we could do at different times of the day? So how can we work with what we have in Reveal to meet the needs of the students and teachers in Eastchester? One of my biggest, or I should say, thing that I think is the most important is the implementation of the mathematical practices, the New York State mathematical practices, and they differ from the content learning standards. These are the practice standards, and they tell students, they emphasize how the student should interact with the math. And how do these standards, so if the teachers can examine the role the practices play in student learning and in their pedagogy and instructional practice, would really benefit the students. The practices encourage teachers to utilize or implement a shift in their instruction that allows for more student-driven lessons and more inquiry-based types of lessons, as opposed to the teacher standing in front of the room being the disseminator of information. We want students thinking and grappling and working with those content and learning standards. And
Nancy, can I just pause you just for just one quick sec? Rob, so for the live stream portion, can Nancy hear us through the microphone in the room and the live stream is through this microphone, or?
I can hear whoever's speaking right now. I don't know if that helps you.
And then the live stream, this is for the whoever is listening live stream to hear us?
No, did you get the Chromebook to work or no?
The microphones are for the district live stream. Nancy can hear you through the camera.
Your voice is coming through the live stream on those microphones.
Got it, and Nancy's that way, through this,
Her microphone, where she's here,
where she can hear us.
is through that.
Got it. So if this is on, and we're talking, Nancy and whoever's on the live stream can hear.
Correct.
Perfect, thank you. Nancy, if I could just pause you just for a quick second. I just have a couple of questions, a clarification if I may, or would you prefer for us to hold questions until the end?
You know, it might be better to hold them till the end, unless it's like a burning question and you don't want me to move on, but I think if you held it and you wrote it down and kind of asked, that would be great in the end.
Okay, this one may be a little bit of a burning question in terms of the recommendations, while we're in this particular area. So just to level set, from the teacher's perspective in your analysis and in your investigation thus far, overall, the teachers have been very happy with Reveal Math, and they feel like they've been given enough professional development and support thus far to effectively utilize this program with the students?
Well, I don't know. They shared with me that they would like even more support.
Okay.
And had multiple questions about what to do when, and so in my read, and just from a professional point of view, there's never enough professional development. No one stops learning in an occupation. I mean, you think of any other, you're always researching and moving forward. And, teaching has changed. I mean, I taught for 39 years, and how I taught when I began my career and how I teach now is vastly different. So do they want it? I'm sure some feel they have enough, but others really want to grow and move forward. But I think the district really should be, professional development should be ongoing. And it should be differentiated at some point for teachers who are in different places in teaching the program. So does that answer your question?
Kind of, yes. Thank you.
Well, you can ask again, or if you can think of a different way to ask it, my apologies if I don't. So pointing out the practices, and I'm going to say many teachers aren't familiar with the mathematical practices, or they don't think about them as they're planning lessons, and might not understand how powerful they are and the difference it makes in student understanding. So also, what is fluency? We hear people, my kids don't know the facts. How can I know the facts? There's a huge difference in how we teach the facts. There's the difference between numerical fluency and the automaticity of facts, just sheer memorization of the facts. So that is something that I think many teachers asked, made comments of. There's not enough rote drill in the program. So what I believe they're missing are the opportunities to teach strategies so students understand the relationship between numbers. Just a very primary example, if students are asking what 6 plus 7, yeah, they could memorize that it's 13. But if a child has numerical fluency, they would quickly say, well, if I'm not sure about 6 plus 7, I do know my doubles. So 6 plus 6 plus 1 will give me the same sum as 6 plus 7. Or conversely, 7 plus 7 is 14, and I'll take 1 away. And that child has extreme flexibility with their understanding of number and their fluency of number. And not that we don't want them to know the facts, absolutely, but it's how we go about getting them to learn the facts. Also, the increase of having teachers provide the opportunity for students to discuss and talk. Now, some mentioned that they have been doing this more, and having them write in math class. Many of the experts in the field, and I can name, Marilyn Burns, and I could name a handful, there are many reasons we want children to write. And first, talking comes first, and then the writing in the math class. Writing helps develop an idea that you're putting on the table, or a concept, or gives children a chance to explore the idea. It can have them extend the idea by the question you ask, or what we call consolidate or cement an understanding. And the last recommendation I would have is, I really believe it would behoove the district to hire a full-time math coach for the elementary schools, perhaps beginning in the 25-26 school year. And that's a big recommendation. I understand, who am I to say that? But the truth is, in the 21st century, mathematical literacy is more important than ever. Yes, we want our children to be able to read and write, but the children who understand mathematics go much farther. The elementary grades truly set a foundation for number sense, numerical fluency, and flexibility with numbers, and with, all of the mathematical underpinnings. They get to middle school, if they don't have that there, they tend to flounder. I don't like math, I hate math, I don't want to take the courses. So really solidifying your K-5 mathematical program puts them in a different place, in my opinion, in middle and high school. So a math coach would have the opportunity to get teachers together, teams of teachers, perhaps a team in Greenvale, their 4th grade team would get together and either study a lesson, plan what we call plan the lesson, teach, then debrief, to be able to look at student work together, to be able to look at their pedagogy or their instructional strategies and practices in their classroom. And that could be an ongoing piece. So that is something that I think would really move math forward on the elementary level in Eastchester. So next steps that I know I could assist with are a handful of workshops to act as catalysts and a jumping point to touch upon the recommendations that I put on the table. A reflect and reboot of Reveal Math, a workshop for teachers, is scheduled at the moment for a half day on the 20th, 21st, and 24th of June. Then, while talking to the administrators, they expressed an interest in having a workshop for themselves, and knowing that there's a little bit of turnover in some of the administrators, and even the ones who are remaining, those are the ones who really requested the workshop. What to look for? What are some of the elements of Revealed Math? What are the most important components? What do they look for as they walk through the buildings and walk into the classrooms? What's evidence of good math instruction on the walls or in the buildings? What should they see? What might they do when they're doing an observation? What might be some things they may ask or look for in a lesson? And then the mathematical practices. How can we examine Reveal through the lens of these practice standards? And so teachers are aware of them and understand the importance and significance of it, particularly that shift in instruction. Also, a course on how do you begin a thoughtful, how do you teach children? Because it's not innate. They don't know how to talk mathematically, and they don't know how to write in math. You need to teach into how to write. So a workshop around that. And also then again, fluency, focusing on the thinking strategies and the number relationships and all of what makes a student fluent and learning the facts and not just memorizing isolated numbers. You know, numbers aren't static. 8 isn't just 8. We can express 8 in many different ways, and students need to be flexible in their thinking, and that's all part of building fluency. So that's a quick overview of what I saw, the data I collected, my recommendations, and what are some next steps for next year and the year after. And I'm going to just close out this.
Nancy, I'm sorry, this is Matt Finelli, the board president. One of the trustees has a question, so I just want to recognize her. Trustee McCluskey, please ask your question of Nancy.
It would be helpful to me, the New York State Mathematical Practice Standards. Could you give us an example of when you say you want to compare Reveal through the lens of the New York State Mathematical Practice Standards? What does that mean exactly?
There are 8 mathematical practice standards. Having students be able to communicate, having them be able to reason, having them be able to solve problems and persevere in them. There are 8 of them. You're going to put me on the spot to try to ask for them all, but they are all listed in lots of places, and they are all evident. There's something in Reveal. There are places in Reveal where it's very obvious what they're asking is a question that reflects the mathematical practices. You're asking students to reflect on something that they have learned and to write about it. So how you want them to engage in the math?
I'm sorry. I'm not a teacher, but I'm just trying to equate to when I learned math back in the day. And I understand Reveal is just a different way of teaching the foundations of math. So I was thinking that the New York State Mathematical Practice Standards are maybe, rote ways going back to a little bit of how, parents of the past were taught math and trying to relate those two concepts together, but I guess that's totally off.
It's not, I understand and I appreciate the question and your curiosity about it, but we didn't have any practice standards. We were just told what to do. I'll go back to myself, and I'm probably older than most of you or all of you at that table, but you stood up in front of the teacher stood up in front of the class, talked about an idea, showed you how to do it, then you went to your desk and you practiced that very same idea, and then all of the questions you asked were around that one idea. It was the teacher as disseminator of information. And you weren't asking kids to grapple or make connections within ideas. It's kind of hard to explain. I'm not prepared to talk, or if had I known, I would have had a slide about the standards. There is a small section, if you've seen some of the pages that go home, it's called Math Is. And Math Is asks it's in the teacher manual, not necessarily the student books, asks certain questions, and every single one is related to one of the 8 mathematical standards. Mathematical practice standards. So they're right there asking kids to make connections and to think deeply about an idea. It's not just spit back something to me. Can I turn off my, did I lose you?
No, you're still there. Could you bring the slides back up, though? I had a question on the recommendation slide.
Oh, absolutely. My apologies. I know I have to try to get where I am here.
I think we all have some questions.
All right, now I'm in trouble. Can you see me struggling on my screen here?
Yeah, maybe I can kind of ask. So I'm still trying to process the recommendations a little bit, right? So if I'm understanding you talked to the teachers, did the surveys, right? We're really trying to assess how well is Reveal working right in the schools right now. And then if I read the first 2 bullet points, I mean, they seem like pretty major recommendations in that after 2 years, that if that was what's coming out of the survey, right, it seems like there's still a major miss in implementing Reveal Math. And I'm not saying that's the teacher's fault. It sounds like, it seems like all the other recommendations are more nice to haves, but if we're not doing the core function of implementing and really making sure teachers understand the philosophical underpinnings of the program and then how to implement it in the classrooms, I think we have to really focus on that from a tactical perspective before we look to do everything else.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. First of all of these recommendations aren't just nice to have, they're all really essential. And from someone who's been doing professional development for many, many years, they aren't just nice to have, and I know it seems it, and I hear what you're saying. The first 2 seem so basic and fundamental and foundational, and they are. But keep in mind, based on what I was told, the professional development that the teachers have had, they had it one day at the end of the school year before they started in September. And they had it for a day or a half day and was thrown a lot of information. And you can only absorb so much and retain it, and when you carry it on. So this would be more, now that we've utilized the program, let's think about the underpinnings. And so the word is reinforce. So talk about the underpinnings, make sure you hear them and you see them. And when you look at the pages, keep that at the back of your head. And then the whole thing about teachers aren't really sure what's absolutely necessary without losing the authenticity of the tool. The program is a teaching tool. So a lot of their questions, well, what do I leave out? I can't make it through everything. And where I taught prior, that was the same exact question. And we defined for them what we as a district felt, these are non-negotiable. And these are something you have to work on. And the others can either be left out or done at different times or not done in the same intensity as the non-negotiable components and multiple components in the program.
So
Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. And you think then going to the next slide on next steps, because it sounds like we need more time, right? We need more time to be able to pull those things through. And I think you said there's 3 days at the end of this month, but I guess I'm jumping more in tactically in how do we do it, knowing that we have a summer, we're going into another school year. Like, you don't want to scratch the surface on a couple of these recommendations, and that takes a whole
Without
year.
question.
You want to
Well-
see more of a, more of a detailed approach on how we can find the appropriate time, training, support, et cetera, to really move the needle, so we're not in the same spot next year.
Exactly. I mean, you're.
Can I say a word
Sure.
on that, if I may,
Oh,
Nancy?
absolutely, Dr. Valenti.
I think it depends on the model that you use. Take the ruler program. We've talked for a whole year about ruler. We call this year, 23-24, year 0. We're not implementing it till next year. What does year 0 mean? It means you train staff and develop teams during that year. Reveal Math was brought in rather quickly, and you didn't have a year 0. So 2 years ago, we inherited Reveal Math for the first year. We didn't spend that prior year, before anybody here was around, doing the deep training. So I think a lot depends on the model. And I think going forward, the board will be well advised when you're making a major change, K-5 or K-12. I'm not talking about small changes, Algebra R expanding or Earth Science. I'm saying a K-5 major curriculum change where you have to have buy-in from 100 teachers. You might want to consider a year 0, and then year 1 is actual implementation.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Dr. Valenti. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I guess it still goes back to my point. It sounds like we still have to create more time to build in that year 0, right? Because we are in we have to figure out ways to play catch up to make the teachers feel confident based on some of these recommendations and next steps, and so.
Well, yes, part of it is take a half step back to take 2 forward. So the reflect and reboot that you see here is just those first 2 recommendations. In other words, let's reflect on where we are in Reveal. Let's talk about what are some of the essential components. Let's talk about the underpinnings and philosophical. I heard just very anecdotally from a couple of parents that I know in Eastchester who say, oh yeah, some teachers skipped the entire first unit, which seems fluffy. It's called Math Is. And even some parents in the district I taught in said, yeah, they're just playing and they're talking about their feelings, and basically they're setting a culture for learning in the environment and in their classroom. And it's essential. And this program, for the many, many that I've seen and utilized throughout the years, this is the most unique program in that it has a beginning unit called Math Is, K-6, that focuses on developing these mathematical practices. They give kids problems, and then they talk about what it means to persevere, or they have a chance to write, or they have a chance to talk about what's good discourse, what does peer-to-peer talking look like. So that part of the underpinnings, I had heard that people were skipping it, so that some teachers skipped it. Now, how true it is, I'm merely going by hearsay, and that would be a disservice. So part of that is the underpinnings, the philosophical underpinnings. So we're reflecting, and it's a reboot, and we're not starting from ground zero by no means, is what I say that. But I think it's important to reinforce what these underpinnings are. And some people will say, yeah, I get it, I've been doing it. And other people might say, oh, you know what, I really haven't been doing it that way. Let me go back and look.
Thank you, Nancy. I want to just recognize some of the trustees and go in order. Trustee DeMarcos had her hand up for a little bit. So Jackie, let's go to you for a question. Chrissy, I know you had your hand up, and then Christine third, if we can do that.
Hi, Nancy.
Thank
My
you.
name is Jackie DeMarco. So this seems to me to be a high-level view
of, I guess, your time with the teachers in the classrooms. So I hear about some of what the teachers liked, but was there sort of an evaluation of the struggles of some of the classes, either among grade levels or lessons or common themes that maybe some of the students are struggling with, whether it be reading comprehension or numerical fluency, with some sort of action plan, whether it's regarding professional development or how to support the students? Because we did have a group of students in elementary that didn't have the Reveal Foundation starting from K and 1. They kind of jumped into it after a couple years of Go Math, so they weren't really used to thinking about this the way that maybe the students starting off were. So was there any sort of discussion about common struggles, common, lesson shortcomings that maybe you had recommendations on specifically?
There were teachers, thank you, it's a very good question. And yes, they look more broad than they really are. There's a lot of details that would be embedded in some of these workshops, for sure. But yes, teachers did say, in grade 1, I'm giving them, and even K, I'm giving them an assessment, and yet they can't read. How do I do that? Or they talked about the difficulty of the text or the language. That was in the survey, yes. And within some of these workshops, we would definitely touch upon ideas and solutions. I'm not able to, from my vantage point, get to all of the nitty-gritty that you're referring to, but I did hear what some teachers did have to say. And you make a good point, that needs to be addressed, and teachers need that kind of support. Hence my recommendation for this math coach, that they would have somebody on a regular basis that they could talk with. A lot of this power of any professional development is getting to meet with faculty meeting with faculty. So 4th grade team meeting and discussing, or the 1st grade team meeting and discussing and strategizing how to utilize whatever it might be that they're doing, or examining lessons very closely. That's where a lot of the powerful PD comes in.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the nitty-gritty that you were referring to. But yes, teachers did talk about it, and I'm aware of a lot of the nitty-gritty problems that teachers do have.
Trustee Gagan.
That's actually my question for Dr. Valenti. I thought that we had a math coach. Do we not have a math coach? Am I thinking of literacy coach, maybe?
Not to my knowledge,
No,
Dr.
we have a literacy coach, actually 2. We're in the process of hiring a 3rd, so that we have 1 in each building. The district 2 years ago, 2.5, decided to hire a STEM coach. And that position does not necessarily agree with math specifically. It gets more into technology.
Okay.
Now, there is some consideration in working with Robert and Minnie, that we ought to handle technology differently. Of course, you did have a model with somebody in each building who was providing it, and for some reason, prior administration decided to go a different direction. At the time, apparently that was perceived to be good, but my recommendation for next year is that we reinvest in teachers in each elementary school, Waverly and Hutchin Greenvale, to be the tech facilitator, and that is in the contract, and that we use those monies to hire a math coach.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
In just hearing that, I applaud that there would be a literacy coach in every building, but remember, mathematical literacy is of equal importance, particularly in the 21st century. It is an intellectual exercise that students need to be proficient at. It's not the stepchild. I have a friend who calls science the stepchild in elementary school, but it really needs to be on the top of the priority. And that's just an opinion. Obviously, there are a lot of things to think about before you can invest in a new faculty position.
Thank you.
And
Christine, we'll go to you and then over to Jill, if that's okay.
Sure. So my question regarding, I see the next steps is utilizing discourse and writing in Reveal lessons. I mean, I guess sort of to comment on what Christy said, you know, and based on our past history, it's here's your math lesson, practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
I don't see, I mean, when you have the utilizing discourse and teaching through the lens of the mathematical practice standards, where's the practice in all of this? And how do you address students who they might computate problems properly, but they have a problem and deficiency in writing and expressing themselves? Because this is math and we're dealing with kids from K through 5. And they might not express how to write an answer properly. It's 2 + 2 = 4, and 2 × 3 should equal 6. And, you know, we shouldn't be worried getting in the weeds of, am I writing this right? So what are your recommendations or comments that you've heard from the teachers?
Well, you know, there are some that say, I want more practice, and that might be coming from a teacher who has not embraced the philosophical underpinnings of the program, and it's not, I mean, you can get practice anywhere. I mean, it's doing again and again and again is not necessarily enhancing understanding of ideas. They can do it, and that's where children have trouble, and then they're given a context or a problem, and then they're like, I don't know what to do because I don't understand what it was that I was computating. So, computing, pardon my.
So just pardon, I guess, what I'm about to say. What is the actual underpinning of Reveal Math? Because I've heard from someone who said, well, we don't really care if a kid can get the answer right. We just want to make sure that they can figure out the problem solving and the logic. And that's a big problem if, you know, you can't say that to an engineer when you're making a bridge. So what exactly is, when you're talking about this underpinning of the, of Reveal, what is that exactly?
Well, the underpinning is I'm talking about the philosophy of the program is student advocacy, letting students choose, letting students lead their own learning. And it seems like kind of crazy, but it's not. Where if I were a teacher and I had a problem and I wanted to teach a concept, and it's a shift in instruction, as I keep saying, where you want students to drive the instruction, you want them to problem solve, you want them to inquire about something. So it's how you pose it. So I'm going to put a problem up on the board, and obviously it's going to be connected to something they've already done that might be a half a step further. And I might say, okay, here's the problem. It can be pretty simplistic. It doesn't have to be very complex. And then I put it out to the class and let them pair off and let them discuss it and talk about it and how would you solve it. And then I, as the teacher, would go around the room and say, okay, what are some points I want to make? And then I call on certain students to come and report up to the class about what they did and why they did it. By the students talking and saying things out loud, it reinforces their understanding. It also brings up a lot of ideas to other students who might not have thought that way. It's much better than my standing up in front of the classroom and saying, okay, this is how you solve the problem. Here's 5 more. Can you mimic my behavior? So it's a shift. It's inquiry is part of the whole philosophy. It's creating a culture of learning in the classroom. It's not about rote drill and here's how you do it, now go do it. So I don't know if I was very articulate in that, but it all blends in. As I said, it's hard to pull them apart, but it's basically the practices are the basis of their philosophy.
Thank you. We have 2 final questions, I think, for you, Nancy. So we're going to go to Jill and then to Sean.
So, thank you, Nancy. I don't mean to beat a dead horse with the question because I think it's in line with what everyone's sort of trying to ask in various different ways. But I think, as Dr. Valenti noted, we implemented Reveal Math very quickly. And I feel like having only 3 days of a teacher workshop, I'm not quite sure whether I feel like that's enough to get us to where we should be now. So I guess I'd be curious to understand, one, to everyone's question, what exactly do we think the teachers are lacking in implementing Reveal Math more specifically, so that we can try to let me know whether you think we're going to accomplish addressing those in those 3 days. I think the math coach is great, but that should really just be a, implement or facilitate additional learning or fine tuning throughout the year that we're going to enter into. But do we think that we'll be where we should be after a whole year of sort of using Reveal Math, not really properly, and then 3 days, if we were supposed to really have sort of that year zero, which is obviously a much longer period of time to implement it properly, which we didn't, but now we have only 3 days. Will that get us to where we should be? Or are there other things that we should be doing to address the 80% of the teachers' issues, not necessarily 100%, but at least to be on point with starting this year and more successfully?
Great, Jill, great questions, great concern, and you're right. My answer would be, no, they're not all going to be where they need to be. And I don't know, a good teacher is never done learning. So yes, the June 20th is it's 2.5 hours per teacher, basically. The 3 days I'm at one of each of the buildings. So absolutely not. It's not everything they need. But there are other workshops. I unfortunately am not at a place in my career where I can go into the classrooms and do that for you for next year. But perhaps there's somebody else who can.
But what would be your recommendation, even if you can't do it? I guess, like, is there something you'd suggest? Because I would hate for us to all leave this room thinking we're going to have a workshop for 3 days and we're good. But, like, what else do we need to think about as far as what we could do?
Well, all the other recommendations, and teachers need to be able to examine lessons and units very closely and decide what are the major objectives and what strategies or what type of lesson. In Reveal, in every single lesson, teachers they can choose a guided, which is more of a traditional way to introduce a lesson, or they can do what's called the activity-based lesson. Most 80% of the teachers say they do the guided. So right there, when I was hearing that, I'm thinking it goes back to the question that was asked, are they absorbing the philosophy? Because in order to do the activity-based lesson, which only about 20% are saying they're doing at some point, that's what we want them to do. We want the teachers to pose a problem and have the students be actively engaged in trying to figure it out.
Thank you.
Not guided through how to do it by the teacher. And that's an option in every single lesson. And some teachers are so adept at blending them. Listen, a lot of great things are going on in Eastchester. And for me to think I'm absolutely perfectly hitting everything, I would be remiss to say that. But I did my very best with the very limited amount of time I had with the teachers and the amount of information I was given via the survey and through the administration to try to decide what is needed moving forward. I know the program well. I know aspects of the program that are integral in really making sure students understand ideas in a particular unit. So I had to use that knowledge as well. Are my recommendations the end all and be all? I think they're pretty good. I don't think we could certainly get where we need to be by 3 workshops. Jill, you made that very clear. We won't. And maybe some teachers will be, but not every teacher. But there's the other workshops where we really take a look at the practices. And it sounds so narrow, but it's not as narrow as that sound. And looking at the practices, we are going to have a conversation about many, many other ideas within a lesson.
Thank you, Nancy. I think, 2 things that I would say, and then, more for us as a district, I think, Nancy, than even potentially the scope of this, and then we'll go to Sean for the last question for this evening. But I think, Joe, you bring up some really good points, and I have to believe that for the rollout of any new program at any school district, there should be some best practices just in terms of overarching professional development. What is the roadmap? As Dr. Valenti suggests, this obviously we've inherited, but is the best practice having that year zero? As you're working through year zero, it's X number of workshops, it's X number of hours, because I think every single one of us recognizes the tremendous responsibility that the teachers have in terms of rolling these things out. And to your point, to get a day or 2 days, or now 3 more days, to think that they're going to be able to seamlessly, educate everyone in this program, I think we need to establish probably a best practice scenario for the future, for the go forward. I think what we're talking about here is maybe just one step, but we probably need 5 other steps that we're not really talking about this evening, quite frankly, that the teachers are going to need in the evolution of this. So with that, that's probably something bigger picture. I think we can unpack perhaps a little bit at our June 18th meeting with Dr. Valenti on some best practices for rollout, period. Outside of an individual program, what should that look like for the district? What do other districts do as best practices? What is the inclusion of the teachers, and what works best? So with that, Sean, let me turn it over to you for our final question for Nancy this evening.
Yeah, hopefully this will be pretty straightforward and easy. And it seems like consistency is the overlying issue here, and making sure that everybody feels comfortable in teaching the same material in the same way and the same methodology to tie into those underpinnings that you mentioned. I guess my concern has to do with, yes, we're using this program for the broader student within the K through 6, but I know a year or so ago, when a student enters into intervention services on the AIS side, they were using a totally different program. So is that still the case? Or because I feel like, how do you have someone go to an AIS program, use a totally different one, and then come back into the population and understand it completely different? So
I know only a little bit of it, and through my conversation with Minnie, that there is a separate program for students who are receiving those services. It's from McGraw-Hill, from what I know, and so philosophically it may be aligned. There are numerous resources built into Reveal Math that are used for Tier 1 intervention that teachers have access to. So they could be using all of that as well. But there is another program. Minnie did tell me what it was. I'm sure I've written it down in my notebook, that to find it would take too long. But there is another program that they do use.
Thank you.
I don't know if that helped.
Any other questions for Nancy before we conclude this portion of our workshop? Nancy, thank you for your time tonight and for the presentation.
Thank you. And just keep in mind, the professional development is supposed to be ongoing and a continued, no one ever gets good enough to stop learning. And I really encourage that, because you have some great teachers and there is some great work going on that I was very impressed with. So I don't want you to think because I have these recommendations that there aren't really good things going on in the district in terms of elementary math, because there really are. And I thank you for your time, and if you have any further questions that I might be able to help with, you can give them to Dr. Valenti and I could go through to him to attempt to answer them. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the evening. I think, are there any other questions that concludes your portion for this evening, correct, Dr. Valenti? Okay. Are there any other questions for Dr. Valenti this evening? Probably have a lot to digest here, specifically around Reveal Math, what a math coach looks like, et cetera. But any other questions for Dr. Valenti now? Okay. So our June 18th will be our regular Board of Education meeting. That will be the last board meeting of this school year, which will be a regular meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Sean, second. Lori, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, Dr. Valenti. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Are we all off here, Rob?